3/5 plus 1/8. First we need a common denominator. Let's use 5 times 8, 40. Second, we need to unreduce. Turn 3/5 into 40ths. Use your denominator for a clue. How does 5 get turned into 40? By multiplying by 8. So we'll multiply the top by 8 as well. 24. Next, 1/8 into 40ths. How does 8 get turned into 40? By multiplying by 5. So I multiply by 5 on the top as well. Now, add or subtract my tops. 24 plus 5 is 29. Remember, your denominator stays the same. 29 40ths, which doesn't reduce. 1/2 plus 13 16ths. First, get a common denominator. 16 will work, because 2 divides into 16 and 16 divides into 16. You could also have used 32 as a common denominator. I'll show that in a bit. Turn 1/2 into 16ths. Now I know that 1/2 is 8/16, so I might be tempted just to write the 8. But again, you can use your denominator for a clue. How does 2 get turned into 16? By multiplying by 8. So I'll multiply by 8 on the top as well. 13 16ths, that's already in 16ths. Now, add or subtract your numerators only. 8 plus 13 is 21. 21 over 16. That does not reduce. That's your answer. I have shown the work for using a common denominator of 32 down here in brown. If you want to look through that work, pause your video now and look at that work. 3/10 minus 3/100. A common denominator for 10 and 100 is 100, because 10 divides into it and 100 divides into it. So to turn 3/10 into 100ths, use your denominator as a clue. How do I turn 10 into 100? By multiplying by 10. And 3/100ths is already in 100ths, so I don't have to change those. 30/100ths minus 3/100ths, tops only. 27, and keep the same denominator, and that is reduced. 2/3 plus 6/7. First, get a common denominator. A good way to find a common denominator is just by multiplying 3 times 7. That will always work. Sometimes there's a smaller one. Not in this case. Next, unreduce. Turn 2/3 into 21sts. Use your denominator for a clue. How did 3 get turned into 21? By timesing by 7. So times the top by 7 as well. How did 7 get turned into 21? By timesing by 3. Notice that if I were to reduce 14 21sts, I would get 2/3. If I reduced 18 21sts, I would get 6/7. They're the same fractions. They're equivalent. We're just getting a common denominator so that we can add. Next, tops only. 14 plus 18. Check for reducing. That does not reduce. There's your answer. 5/4 minus 4/9. First, get a common denominator. 4 divides into 36. 9 also divides into 36. Again, a good way to get a common denominator that works is just to multiply 4 times 9. Next, unreduce your fractions. 5/4, make that into 36. Use your denominator as a clue. 4, how does that get turned into 36? By multiplying by 9. How does 9 get turned into 36? By multiplying by 4. Now subtract. Remember, tops only. 45 minus 8. Keep your denominator the same. That does not reduce. 3/4 plus 5/6. What would our common denominator be? We want the lowest number that both 4 and 6 divide into. You could use 24. 4 times 6 is 24. I will show that in a little bit. There's also a smaller one, 12. 4 divides into 12 evenly and 6 divides into 12 evenly. Now, unreduce your fractions. 3/4 turn that into 12ths. Use the denominator as your clue. How does 4 get turned into 12? By multiplying by 3. So do that on the top as well. How does 6 get turned into 12? By timesing by 2. So multiply your numerator by 2. Now we do tops only. 9 plus 10. Keep your denominator the same. 19/12. I have also shown the work for doing the problem with a common denominator of 24. If you did it this way, pause the video to see if your work is right. To change from a mixed number to an improper fraction, 2 1/4. Using the pies, you draw some pies that are split into fourths. Now we have 2 whole pies and 1/4 of a pie. So how many fourths is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 fourths. Another way to do this problem is take the 2 times the 4 and add the 1. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9, so the 9 then is your numerator, and keep the same denominator. So 9 fourths. To change 13/3 into a mixed number, I've drawn a bunch of pies over here that are split into thirds. So let's count up what 13/3 would look like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There's 13/3. So how many pies is that? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1/3 pies. So 13/3 is the same as 4 and 1/3. A way to do that without drawing out the pies, if you take 13 and divide by 3, so that would be like this, 13 divided by 3. 3 goes in there 4 times with a remainder of 1, so you would say 4 and 1/3. Even if you do it without drawing the pies, I think it's helpful to have the picture of the pies in your head so that you can know what you're really doing. To multiply fractions, you multiply straight across. So multiply 2 times 5 is 10. Multiply 3 times 12 is 36. Then we just need to reduce. So both of these are even. So a 2 will divide out. (5/18). Remember, multiplying fractions, it's no problem. First you do the top, then you do the bottom. Okay? Dividing fractions. To divide fractions, you flip the second fraction and multiply, or you multiply by the reciprocal of the second fraction. I recommend rewriting the whole problem. 8/3 times 3/4. Now multiply straight across the top and straight across the bottom. You get 24 divided by 12, 24/12. A couple of ways of reducing this. One way is just to do the division problem. 24 divided by 12 is 2. Also, if you wanted to reduce it, you could also divide out a 12 from both top and bottom, which would give you 2 over 1, and 2 over 1 is the same thing as 2. So either way you reduce, you get an answer of 2. 3/4 divided by 5. Remember that when you have a whole number, 5, it's the same thing as 5 over 1. To divide by a fraction, you multiply by the reciprocal of the second fraction. I recommend rewriting the whole problem. 3/4 times, flip that, 1/5. Then multiply like normal, straight across. 3 times 1 is 3, 4 times 5 is 20. That does not reduce, 3/20. 1/2 times 10. Again, make the 10 into a fraction by putting it over 1, and then multiply straight across. 1 times 10 is 10, 2 times 1 is 2, 10 over 2. Again, you can just use that as a divided by sign. 10 divided by 2 is 5, so the answer is 5. Or if you reduce like normal, you divide a 2 out of both top and bottom, giving you 5 over 1, which is equal to 5. If you think of saying this, half of, multiply means of, 10, you can also come up with 5 pretty quickly. Half of 10 is 5. At this point, pause the video and do the fraction to decimal practice by memory with no calculator. You can skip 1/11 if you want to. Then unpause the video and check your answers. Here are the answers to the fraction to decimal practice that should be done by memory. If you have put in like instead of 0.33333, if you put 0.3 repeating, that's the same thing on any of these repeating ones, 0.1 repeating. Take time to check yourself. These should all be ones that you know by memory already, except for this one. We haven't done 11ths, so if you didn't do that one, no big deal. You will have to do this on your next test, by memory, no calculator.